Chelsea are the world champions! They've recruited smartly, they're evolving tactically, they pulled apart the mighty PSG! But does this mean they're genuine title contenders for the Premier League? Well, this might be a bit of recency bias, but I want to try and show you why I think they might be. And reason number one is that they weren't that far off it last season. They finished in 4th place, about 15 points behind Liverpool, so what you really want is they can get to about 85-90 points, they might be in with a chance. And they can do that if they fix their biggest problem, which brings me to reason number 2. They may have fixed their biggest problem. But what is that problem? Well, if we look at the season as a whole, it kind of stands out. The first half of the season, really, really good. Second half of the season, not as good. But why did they drop off? Well, what stands out for me when you look at the data is that their creativity really fell down. So they had fewer touches in the box the second half of the season, they had far less XG per game, but even worse than that, they scored under their XG even worse than in the first half of the season. So they're not creating enough chances and they're not taking them. And in fact, you can really see that when you look at it long term. So Chelsea's non-penalty XG 4 and against over time, see Pochettino gets it to around about here, Maresca comes in, does pretty well. But what's important is that their expected goals against go right down, their expected goals for are really high. Then, as the drop comes round about here, everything goes downhill. They create far less, but they allow fewer chances against them as well. So why is that? Well, I think some of it might actually be deliberate. And let me show you what I mean. Here is Cole Palmer, the star of the show. And what you've seen him do last season a lot is slow things down. He's going to do this, exactly the same thing, in the Club World Cup final. Here's all the space. He could run into this. Chelsea can go and really go at PSG. This is what you want to do. But when he gets into the position, he's got all these options. He can play it forward into a striker and behind the defence. He can go back against the rhythm and try and play it out wide, keep going forward. But instead, he stops it. He stops the play, everything around him slows down as well. And the reason he does this is so that Chelsea can gain control. By going end to end, you're going to leave spaces open for opposition to counter into, but it also means you can be consistent. You can consistently create the same kinds of chances, defend the same spaces, do what the manager wants, basically. And the problem is not that they're slowing things down, is that when they do that, they then come up against low blocks like this. So then you end up having to, there's no way to get the ball into the box from these situations, and slowing things down creates these sorts of scenarios. And last season in Madueke and Sancho, they were okay at breaking these down sometimes, but those two players just lacked the X factor to unlock things. And basically, unless Cole Palmer was able to pull something out of his magic hat, they weren't winning games. But they've recruited this summer. They brought in players like Estevam, who could be really exciting as a right option. They've got Tyreek George, who's done really well in the wide areas as well, and Jamie Gittins has come in from Borussia Dortmund, who gives you an option on this left side to burst past players, a different kind of profile of player. But there was one clear problem they had to address most of all, and that is that their forwards just weren't taking their chances. Nicholas Jackson, Noni Madueke, Christopher Nkunku, João Felix, all of them shot under their expected goals. They weren't even creating that many expected goals in the first place, but they're still shooting under, not taking their chances. And Jackson is the prime example of a player who does this an awful lot. As you can see over the last 2 seasons, his expected goals are 31.1, but his goals are 24. It's a massive underperformance. But he's generating a lot of XG, so that's a good thing. The problem is that Jackson got injured for about 9 games last season, and the knock-on effect wasn't just that he wasn't in the box to score, is that it affected the entire rest of the team. Because that Jackson injury coincides with the slump in form that Chelsea had, because a striker isn't just there to score goals, he needs to be able to link up play properly. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can bother defenders to create space for others. And so what they've done is bring in João Pedro, who's going to make an enormous difference to how they build up, how they attack, everything. You can see it here. This is the Club World Cup against Palmeiras. Now, Chelsea under a bit of pressure from Palmeiras in this example, are going to hoof the ball forward just to get it out. And as they're going forward, here's João Pedro, the last line, trying to chase it down. Now, what Pedro does that other strikers they've had, like Jackson, is that he's able to use his physicality, his aggressiveness, to position his body, to move that defender out the way, shove him out the way, to win the space, to win the ball back. And now suddenly Chelsea have runners coming into the space. And this is the kind of thing that some players can do that others can't. João Pedro is so good at link-up play that you can play the ball to him hard along the ground, you can control it, lay in a teammate, but you can also play it ahead of him, you can chase it down, push defenders out the way, bring others into the game. It's going to make an enormous difference to how Chelsea attack. And that aggression is something that Maresca definitely wants. In fact, Chelsea had more yellow cards than any team last season, and so that combined aggression of players like João Pedro, Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, Liam Delap, Marc Cucurella, all of that makes Chelsea horrible to play against. And so having a player like that up front, especially, really helps with everything defensively and in attack. And that aggression brings me nicely onto reason number 3. Chelsea might have the best midfield pair in the entire league. Now I know that's hyperbole, but bear with me because we got Moises Caicedo. Very expensive, so is Enzo Fernandez, but his defensive work is unbelievable. He's everywhere, all of the time. His teammates have talked about it. Romeo Lavia says that he can't even make as many tackles as he wants because Caicedo's often already there. And we saw it in the Club World Cup, we saw it in the Premier League last season. This is all the work he does. But he is the defensive work rate partner to Enzo Fernandez, who it turns out is really good under the radar. Now he only has 13 combined goals and assists, which doesn't sound that good, but actually it's the 3rd best in the Chelsea team. And he's often had to play quite deep in midfield alongside Caicedo, when his best position is higher up the pitch as more of a number 10. And you can see when he does get on the ball, he creates a lot of chances. Now Cole Palmer is the star player for Chelsea, we know that already, but Enzo Fernandez has the 4th most chances created of any player in the league last season. And so you might think the price tag was big, but for both of those players, they're now showing that they're exactly what Chelsea or any team would need in the midfield. A mixture of defensive work rate and vision and passing, everything. And so what you want to do is get your best players like Enzo Fernandez into their best positions, like the number 10 position where he can do all of this. But that's where Palmer plays. But that's what Chelsea are doing now. They're moving players around to get the best out of each other and the team as a whole. And that brings me on to my next point. It's all coming together tactically. So what we've seen from Chelsea over the last while, they often build in a 3-2 shape. Sometimes it's like this, to have the fullback will invert and you get the back 3 like this, and you get the box shape further forward, 2 wingers, and then you've got your forward there. But they've started changing things up, and a lot of it is to do with the fullbacks. Marc Cucurella, for example, plays completely different roles in his fullback position in every single game. This is what they've done in the Club World Cup so far. Cucurella against LAFC, playing through the middle an awful lot like a midfielder, but a lot of wide touches. Flamengo almost exclusively on the left-hand side of the pitch like a winger. Against Benfica, an even more attacking winger, getting into the box on the last line, helping form overloads, disrupting the defence. Against Palmeiras, a bit more defensive, coming inside the midfield more to try and help with build-up and protect against counterattacks. Fluminense, even more attacking, turning up in places you wouldn't even expect him to. He's playing as a number 9 at times, but he's a left-back. And against PSG, again, completely different. Withdrawn, more like an extra defender, protecting against counterattacks. And they're doing it with a right-back now as well. What you can see here is Malo Gusto, the right-back, highlighted in an attacking midfield position. But what's interesting about this is that Maresca is trying to pin opposition defenders. He's trying to create space for others. Because Gusto being here means that someone has to mark him. It's probably this guy here, maybe he should be there. But what you can't see is that Pedro Neto is wide, so actually this guy has to go here. So he's got a tension now. Where does he go? Who marks him? Who goes to that position? And that helps free up space for others, because you may remember that Chelsea slump in form. Well, it coincided exactly with Cole Palmer's slump in form. Here's his first half of the season, the green is goals, assists are blue, and then here's the second half of the season, much less. So they missed Jackson round about here. That's where all the goals stop happening, and then they just can't really get back in form. But Palmer is being marked in a different way, and so Maresca has found new ways to get him into space. Which brings us back to Gusto, again, against Palmeiras in the same game. He's high up the pitch, playing in that exact role, and Chelsea are coming forwards. Now what you have here is Chalobah, the centre-back, has been able to move all the way up, and the reason he can do this is because you've got a wide player here, but crucially, Maresca has created tensions. Because you've got this wide player next to the wingers. That's what you want to have. But who is going to go out to this player? It's probably this guy here. But if he goes, he's going to leave Palmer spare because Gusto is keeping this player spare. Maybe he can jump up, but if he goes, that means Palmer can, or Delap can get in behind here. So there's lots of knock-on effects here. And so what happens is eventually that player decides he has to go. But when he goes forward towards him, he opens up a lane for Chalobah to fire this pass into Cole Palmer, who can then turn and they score. And so by moving the fullbacks around to pin opposition players, Maresca is creating chances for Palmer to be even more dangerous again. And he's doing that in all sorts of different ways. In the Club World Cup, we've had Palmer playing on the right, through the middle, on the left, but every position he plays, he ends up in these same exact positions. If he plays on the left back overlaps him. If he plays on the right, you might have a right back overlapping him or underlapping him, and then when he underlaps and makes the move, then he frees the space up for Palmer to move into. Everything has been done to get more out of their attacking players. And then of course you've got Fernandez in behind, who can come and thread the ball into players like Palmer to finish. So all the best players are getting in their best positions. But here's the main point. Chelsea are now tactically flexible. They're changing depending on their opponents. So you might have Palmer wide, you might have in the middle, like we said, but also you might have one single pivot and then players in midfield dropping in. That's how they played against Palmeiras. And how they played against Palmeiras was very different to how they played against PSG, which was all about out of possession work. And we can see this from the very start of the game. Here's Chelsea in a 4-4-2 kind of shape here, trying to press PSG from the very start really high and aggressively, and it's a hybrid press, so each player has different work to do depending on where the ball is. Now what you're going to have when the ball goes to the side here, here's the ball circled here, what you're going to have is this player is going to jump out here, which means Cole Palmer has to jump out this way. Palmer's also close to this player here, so the ball goes to that side, that's his job. Then you've got James has to mark this player, but maybe this player, maybe Caicedo goes over here, maybe he goes here. Everything is ball dependent, but done really well and really aggressively. And so what ends up happening is the ball goes to this side, and we see Palmer straight away sprinting, so we know that's what his job is now, to do that. But that means this player is spare, so where does this player go? Does he mark him? Who's going to come in here? You're about to find out, and the answer is not what you'd expect. It's actually Chalobah, who is a centre-back who's run all the way from centre-back to get tight to Fabian Ruiz over here. So there's not one single player that PSG can pass to. It's impossible to break through Chelsea. They've gone at them hard and disrupted the way they want to play. And that means when they clear the ball forward, Chelsea win possession and then they can build from the back. And there are even more cool things in that game to do with their tactical setup that was different to other games. But Alex Barker's covered that in a short, which you should definitely watch on this channel as well, after this video again. Because I want to come to my final point, which is how all of this is used to try and make Chelsea much, much better this season. All of it comes together as one. And we're going to go back to that moment I showed you earlier where Palmer slows things down, because it's not what you think. Because here is Palmer, as we know, running into the space, slowing things down, not playing the forward pass, and stopping, and everything goes slow against him, and it seems a bit boring, and there's lots in the Premier League last season, like why are you doing that? But it gets even worse, because Palmer actually goes all the way back to his own half, and then passes it back to a defender. Then that defender passes wide, and then they have to go backwards all the way to the goalkeeper. So they've gone from an attacking transition moment to be able to play and split open a dangerous opponent to going all the way back to their goalkeeper. But here's the thing, what they've done by doing that is created loads of space in the middle. They've stretched PSG apart. They're taking them from back to forward to back, makes it really hard to man mark everyone. It's tiring to keep tracking each player individually, and they can use that to drag open the middle to create space for players to be on there. But they've also created space and a problem for PSG by having their roaming fullback Malo Gusto go all the way up the pitch. So when Sanchez knocks it long, you've got Gusto against his defender here, but look, this is the back four for PSG. It's really split open. There's lots of space in between, and the player who's going to score in the situation is Cole Palmer, who's meant to be looked after by Fabian Ruiz. But you can already see you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 players against the back line of PSG. They don't want that to happen. And as play continues, Gusto gets past his man into the box, tries to have a little shot up to the defender, but the crucial bit is that then he's able to find Cole Palmer on the edge of the box, takes his time in space, not marked by Fabian Ruiz, who hasn't tracked him all the way because it happens in a heartbeat, and he slots it in the back of the net. That's Chelsea 1-0 up. They end up winning the Club World Cup 3-0, tearing them apart with all these different things. But the point is that Enzo Maresca can change things mid-game, between games, there's different players for different situations, everything changes on the opponent, but the principles remain the same. They keep possession, they can attack and transition when they want to, they don't go too early, they don't go too late, they can change things up, and now they have players that make them even better. Which brings me on to my final point. You will remember when we all made fun of Chelsea for signing 8 million players, and they do have quite a lot, but what they do definitely have now is depth. Because the problem with all of this is whether they can do it consistently. That was a one-off tournament at the end of a season. They can have a rest now. If they can start well, they can start the next season. Maybe they'll have another start to the season like they did last time. But what they need then is to rotate players, have more that can come in. And Maresca seems to like to have a small amount of players that he trusts and then rarely changes that up too much. But he's got more players that he wants in, and they're all really good. And the other thing with that is there's now also a core group of players that know how each other plays. They've learned this over a year. Maresca can add things, he can change things. They know how to play in different situations with a core group that sticks together and knows each other really well. And so they can keep playing aggressively, they can play it with intensity, they can slow it down when they want to, they've got players who can create in different positions. They've kind of got everything they need. And that brings us back to our very first point. This season you're going to have Liverpool should be there, Arsenal are going all for it, but maybe both of them won't be as good as they want to be. Maybe Chelsea can sneak in there, because Man City might not be there, you never know. Newcastle, can they keep it up? There might be a small gap this season for someone who maybe don't fancy to get in there. Chelsea won't be favourites, but I think they quite like that. And what I've seen from what Maresca is doing makes me think they should be up there. So are Chelsea genuine title contenders? I think maybe yes. But only if they can deal with what their opponents are doing. And that might be something new And you can find out what those things are by watching the video we have on the channel about the 5 tactical trends to watch out for this season. So do that now, and I'll see you later. Bye!
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Amy Lawrence and James Horncastle. With the latest transfer news and insights on every Premier League story that matters, theathletic.com puts you inside football, and you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.